Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about 5 ways to instantly make your pictures more interesting. So this is really for the beginners if you're just picking up photography now, or you just have a phone camera and you just want to know how to make your pictures more interesting, then cool, this is totally for you. I'm not a professional, but I'm just speaking from my own experience, so welcome! Also, I'm experimenting with lighting. If you saw my last video, well, it was kind of a mess, but I finally got a ring light, so maybe that will make the lighting in my room a lot better, because you know, it's almost like fall and it's gonna be dark here soon, so we'll see. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. The very first #1 tip that I have for you is to try to shoot through stuff. So let's say you're at the beach and you see the nice water and the nice sand and you're like, I'm gonna take a picture. So naturally, I feel like most people, and this is just based off of my observations, most people would generally just try to capture the water and the sand. And that's okay if you're trying to get a background picture, but if you want to make it more interesting and you see, say, like a fence or some plants, try to incorporate that. So if you see a fence, squat down with your camera, try to use the fence as a way to kind of frame the picture, and it'll make it a whole lot more interesting because it'll add kind of a foreground and more depth. And by the way, I'm going to be showing pictures that I have taken to kind of like, you know, help it all make more sense. So yeah, anyways, buildings, mountains, plants, people, signs, like there's so many things that you could use as kind of like a potential foreground for framing your picture. Tip #2 is to pay attention to the rule of thirds. So I did not make this up. My dad told me this and numerous other studies, but basically the human eye is attracted to kind of like the lines of thirds. So what I mean by that is basically on, I'd say like phone cameras or regular cameras, there's normally an option to turn on a 3x3 grid, and where those lines are where the human eyes are attracted to. So if you're trying to take a picture of a specific object, make sure it lines up with one of those lines. And it will just make it a lot better framed. It'll just improve the quality of the picture overall. And even better, if you can get the object to line up to where one of those third lines intersect, that is even better. Which is kind of counterintuitive in my opinion, because I used to think like, oh, if I'm taking a picture, I'm gonna want it to be centered, right? But actually not, you want it to be more off to the side or closer to those third lines. Tip #3 is to don't be shy with your angles, okay? Like, a lot of people tend to kind of take pictures like this. They'll just be standing there eye level straight on, which is like the logical way to take pictures. But if you want yours to stand out, you gotta squat down. Maybe you look a little weird. Don't worry, you're not gonna look weird. And maybe it's a building, you can squat down, take a picture up, or up a tree or whatever. Or if you're trying to take a picture of a wall, it is a whole lot more interesting to take the picture of the wall kind of from the side or just more interestingly framed than just straight on, because it just creates so much more depth in your picture, kind of like the first thing I was talking about, adding that depth and nice depth, not death, depth. I can't pronounce things, and just making it a lot more cool to look at. Tip #4 is to not be afraid to move around or move the objects around you. So if you're taking some pictures of, let's say, some products or some plants or something, you can move them around. I mean, obviously if it's in nature, don't go moving plants around, but if you can move the objects around, cool. Or if you can't, walk around and take tons of pictures, right? Like when I take pictures, normally I'll take like maybe 10 or 15 of one thing, and then I'll go back and then choose like the 3 best ones. And chances are, if you're taking so many pictures, yes, you will get some really bad ones, but you'll also get some really cool ones that you'll save. So there's no harm in taking tons of pictures unless people are waiting impatiently for you, which, I mean, that happens, right? But try to take a ton of pictures, experiment with your angles, experiment with the objects around you, and you'll find some cool pictures. And lastly, tip #5 is to try to find something that'll make your picture unique, right? So let's say you're going to a beach, going back to that beach example, you would probably want to find something that's kind of interesting or unique about that beach. Because if you're gonna show it to like your relative or auntie afterwards and you want it to look cool, then I'm sure they've seen tons of beaches in their lives before, right? So like, what can you do to make this beach more interesting to look at. Maybe it's a mountain, a fence, a plant, some people there, some action. You got those boats or kites, just anything to spice it up a little, just beyond the water and the sand. There's just so much to look at. So yeah, those are all my tips for today. Basically, I'm just trying to say, take a ton of pictures, have fun with it. People don't really realize like how many choices you get to make as a photographer. It's a really fun form of art. You get to choose the angles, what you're taking a picture of, how you are, and then so many choices with the camera, which I'm still trying to learn. And just experiment with it and you'll get better with it over time. You'll realize what looks good and what doesn't. Like, share, and subscribe if this was helpful, and let me know if you try any, because that would be cool. Bye!